Hey, it's Chris. What are we talking about? Evolution, Another World, Crowd Games, coming to Kickstarter soon in May. So what do you need to know about this game? This is another in the line of the Evolution style games, but how does it compare? Who is it right for? Pros, cons, everything else in between. A little bit of analysis, a little bit of thought going into the campaign to give you a little bit more insight. Let's do this. Roll Liege, baby. So what is Evolution, Another World? It is a take on an engine build with a thematic incorporation of slowly upgrading your animals or your creatures in order to best suit your needs, in order to transmutate 3 to be the eventual winner in this game. And how that's done is you have the use of double-sided cards here that give you 2 different traits on each card that is going to be able to be utilized. And what you're going to be doing is you're going to be playing these on a creature-by-creature basis in order to either energize them, gain more attack value, gain in defensive value, or allow them to manipulate the board state. And each of them is going to give you a slight variation of how you're going to be able to do that. With the goal, like I said, being of transmutating. Transmutating in the sense that each of these creatures has 4 spots down here at the bottom that you are going to be then trying to fill up with the energy cubes. And you're taking on a turn-by-turn basis one of 3 potential options. You have to do one, the other 2 are total potentials. So how a round may go is you have a certain number of cards in your hand, 5 at the beginning, and 2 of your optional abilities are either playing one of these traits to one of your individual monsters, whichever it may be, either side of your choice. Now it's color coded to show you what type of ability is. There are certain numbers of each of these traits as well, so there's not as much to remember. They also give you this handy dandy sheet so you can say, okay, 4 of these, 4 of these, 4 of these, 4 of these, and 4 of these. And so they run you through all of these relatively straightforward once you play the traits once or twice. And so what one of the options is you can place it underneath one of your creatures. You can do that once per turn. Orange here in this case is my attack value, and that's lulling. And then I can potentially also take one of my cards, and instead of using the trait side, I can flip it over to get a new creature out there. And so then I can have a 3rd creature available to me in that sense. But the other option that I have then that I have to take every single turn is I have to activate one of my creatures unless they are all asleep, as indicated by this token. If they're asleep, they cannot be used further this round. Now you can waken them back up based on some of the traits that are available, but for the most part, once they're asleep, they're kind of out of play. But they are not out of play for your opponents, and that's the other side of things we'll talk about here in a second. And this is going to be probably the biggest make it or break it for people in a game like this. So what you essentially do is you choose one of your creatures. Now if I just laid this one down, I have 3 creatures in which I can activate, and activating gives you several different options in what you can do. 1, you can attack, like I mentioned. 2, you can transmutate if you have all of the energy full in order to do that. So what you have to do on your turn is the activation. You have to choose one of your monsters, animals, creatures, whatever you want to call them out there, and you have to activate it. And when you activate it, you also get to activate the traits. But the activation actions are essentially separate as well. Some of that correspond in this case, but some of them are going to be completely separate because you'll have other characteristics out there that may just be able to be activated alongside that creature in the first place. And so the first thing that you do is you have these energy basins, essentially, these sources. And the first thing you can do is you can just take an energy from one of these spaces. And so, for example, if I'm playing with 3 players, that starts out with 3 energy, and I take one of those, and I get to put it on whichever creature I'm activating. And that's important. It's not just put it on anyone. It's the one that you're activating. So if I'm activating this one, nope, let's activate this one. Okay, because he doesn't have any traits. So I activate him, he has an energy. Now, if you do that action, you do not go to sleep. I don't have to put a sleep token on him. He can do another action later in the round if I so choose. Then the second action that you can do is you can transmutate. So if this guy, for example, wasn't sleeping already, I could transmutate him, take him out of my lineup completely, and put one of these handy dandy little tokens. And that's to indicate that I have 1 transmutated. And when you have 3 transmutations, you win. That's all the game is in terms of victory conditions. So it's an engine build style of game with some take that as well. And that the take that is what we'll talk about in a minute. Now, the last thing that you can do is, like I mentioned, lulling here is an attack value. Lulling, attack. The target falls asleep. If it does, this creature gains an energy from the supply. And so that's not the source. That's not the basin that I mentioned. It's the actual supply over here on the side. So then they would get an energy. But the difference with that action as opposed to the other 2 actions is now they go to sleep and I can't utilize them. So then other people will go, it come back to me. This guy, well, this guy can't activate an attack ability, doesn't have a trait. I can't transmutate because he's not full of energy. So the only other option that I have is the fourth, and that's actually to sleep. And so that's what you have to do. Now, when everybody has all gone to sleep, then you remove all these tokens. You then look at how many creatures you have that have at least one energy. You draw 2 plus the number of cards. So in this case, I have 2 creatures with at least 1 energy. So I would take the 2 plus the 2 creatures that I have. So I would take 4 cards. So now all of a sudden I have 4 creatures that I could potentially take and utilize either to add them down here or flipping them back over and adding one of these traits. And so now I have all of these traits that I'm looking at in terms of how I want to do that. You have things that are including metamorphic. You can copy an ability, fireproof. So fire breathing attack here doesn't actually hurt. And a lot of the attacks will not only gain the attacker an energy, but they may potentially lose the defender an attack, lose the defender an energy. But then you also have things to bounce it off, right? Vengeful, after you get attacked, the attacker loses a trait. Or toxic, for example, where they lose 2 energy if you get attacked. So that's the balancing of how you're going to be putting these traits out. Now, there is no limit to how many traits you can have on a creature, and they can all be potentially activatable or usable in that sense. The only thing that is really sort of a little bit different that's going to modify that in some way, shape, or form is this one, and this one's tiny. Tiny in the sense that you may transmutate now, not if they have 4 crystals down here, but you actually only need 3. But the limiting factor on that is because they're tiny. If they have more than 3 traits, they can't actually transmutate even if they have the 3 energy. So that's the thing that you need to know. Again, you just go round by round by round until somebody wins with 3 transmutations going back and forth. Now, on the new round, you also put out a new energy source. And some of these energy sources, for example here, actually have 2 spots that you're going to be getting energy. So if we were playing 3 players, there would be 4 energy down here at the bottom. And then I put 2 additional up here on the top for charming, meaning there's 2 up here and then there's 4 down here that are available. And so if you have one of these abilities that matches the energy here, then you can grab one of the energies from top, because otherwise the bottom ones are just sort of free for all, whoever gets it first. And so those run out very quickly, but the ones on the top, you're going to have the matching trait in order to do it in that sense. And so that's where it becomes a little bit different. That's the game in a nutshell. Like I mentioned, the big contentious point is going to be, you're going to be doing a lot of attacking. Attacking is one of your 3 main actions on a turn-by-turn basis, and you're going to be gaining, losing energy, and how you do that and how you like that, especially at the higher player counts, is going to be a little bit chaotic. It's going to be a lot of random. It's going to be very tactical, not very strategic whatsoever. And so if you're looking for that side of things, that's going to take away a lot of your interest in this game. I mean, because it's a heavy element of things. Now, the other thing that I'll say is, frankly speaking, if this was it alone, this is a little bit just family friendly. It's a little bit lighter in terms of that. And I feel like it needs a little bit of something. Now, the good news is that the Kickstarter is actually going to have 3 additional modules that are going to go along with it. And to be frank, it adds it in all the areas that I would expect. And I would say just playing this retail version alone, it makes me feel a little bit wanting. But looking at what they've already said is going to be out there, they're going to have special abilities, stronger type abilities that are going to actually cause you to need to lose traits in order to activate them, which is good, because then you're going to have to put more traits out there, and the traits are not insignificant. And so this can make it more meaningful in terms of also take that potentially as well. The second one is ethereal. You're going to be making cards that are ethereal, not only the cards that you have out potentially, but also the ones that you've transmutated. And so that's going to add a whole nother dimension to it, and actually says that not only can you add them to your creatures, but potentially adding traits to other people's creatures, which none of the ones that I have access to right now allow you to do that. You can attack other people's creatures, you can attack your own creatures, but you can't add traits to other people's creatures. So that adds another new dynamic there. There's also a 5th of 6 player expansion. There's also going to be stretch goals, and they say the stretch goals are going to be more content and more of these basins, these energy wells, because frankly speaking, there's not enough variety in here. And so if they give a few with the stretch goals here, and they give a few more types of the stretch goals in the modules here, it really gives this game another leg to stand on. So clearly, just based off of that, I would recommend that if you're going to get it, you get this game with all of the modules, because they don't feel like necessarily like modules that are going to not get played. They feel like modules that really take it from, a light kids family style game to okay, this is a good filler game. And again, not using filler is a bad thing. This is a solid core engine, But if you don't like Take That, if you want something a little bit more, I mean, it reminds me very much of Trekking Through History. You know, the game where I like the base game, but the expansion is the make it or break it for me. The expansion is the thing that keeps it in my collection right now. And that's what this modularity is going to need. And when I say modularity, I mean, like, I wouldn't want to play without the modules, not even having played with them, but just looking at the base game right now and saying, okay, it needs a little bit stronger abilities. It needs a little bit more asymmetry in that aspect. It needs a little bit more of the variety here and a couple other varieties out here. Just again, there's 4 of each kind. You've got 16 different traits, but you know, it reminds me more of like, I would like an Oceans style trait situation, right? Like if you've played Oceans with the deep deck, like every single one is unique and just some craziness there. Now, again, that goes into balancing, but like that's what this needs a little more of. And so if they're going to do that with the stretch goals and you're going to pay an extra $15 for the stretch goals and all 3 modules, because they say that the base game is going to be retail wise on the crowdfunding $30 and the all in, whatever that looks like in terms of the content, it looks like for $45. Well, I think it's a no brainer that you get the $45 one if you're interested in this at all, because the modularity, the additional layers of complexity, and not even that complex, but just the additional layers of ingenuity in terms of fun are gonna make this game have a longer half-life, because I could see this game also just with the one that I have alone, playing it 3 or 4 times, it's gonna get a little samey. It is, no doubt about it right now. But if you have those other things that are available, all of a sudden it goes from really samey to, okay, there's a little bit of a meta and there's a little bit of asymmetry each time, and it gives you a little bit of, you know, chaos. I like that. And so it needs that, I would say. And so that's why I would say if you're looking at this, you definitely want to get that extra package, as much as I hate saying that, the extra content. And they say that some of it's not going to be necessarily exclusive, but they're not sure if it's going to go to wide retail. And that's directly from the Board Game Geek forums at the time of me filming this. So take that for what you will. But that's the game in a nutshell. I mean, artwork's fantastic. It is what it is. And makes no bones about it. It's a smooth, solid game already at its core. I mean, you don't have an incomplete game here. It's a complete game. There you go. Stay classy. Thanks for watching. Let me know if you have any comments, questions, or concerns down below. Subscribe if you want. Trying to get to 10K. And roll Liege. Have a great freaking fantastic forking day. See you around.